Just wanted to say hello. Hello to friends who come and visit, to new friends that are here. It's really a wonderful morning to be here, and especially with such an inspiring message that was read by Biga about resisting temptation. The Spiritist doctrine comes to us with so many enlightening messages and studies. And one of the amazing aspects of the teachings is to truly give us an opportunity to reason, to search for answers, to study, to base everything that we receive as far as the teachings goes on our understanding of that topic. We are going to find in our study today on miracles, as we can see here, a topic that in reality has a lot of interest for many of us. Just thinking about miracles alone makes us feel really great at heart. We all wish to witness a miracle. Some of us have witnessed a miracle. A lot of people define their very life on a miracle that they have witnessed. So when we saw this topic and Susanna requested that we do this study here today, we of course went to the very first basic books of the Spiritist doctrine, beginning with the Genesis, Miracles and Predictions according to Spiritism, and then we also utilized the Gospel according to Spiritism in the Spirit's book. But I wanted to bring your attention to the Spiritist magazine, which is an amazing tool that we currently have available that can be found online for free, downloadable. And the edition of July 2008 was completely devoted to the aspect of miracles. Miracles as far as forgiveness is concerned, Christ consciousness and the miracles, and so the miracles in the gospel. Susanna actually has one of the articles in this magazine. So I really encourage you guys to go home, put on Google search if you don't receive the magazine yet. It's free, downloadable online, or you can also pay and get an actual magazine for you to be able to turn the pages on. But back to the topic. What is it about miracles that sparks an interest on so many minds? What is a miracle to you? Veronica.
Something out of the ordinary, something special.
Something special. That's one of the things about miracles. Something out of the ordinary that always blows our mind, but always in a positive manner. Something that really gives us a new meaning for life. Something that encourages us to keep going forward. Anybody else? What is a miracle to you?
Something positive happens against all odds.
Okay. Thank you. Jean.
Oh, he is.
Jean is a miracle. Okay, we'll get to that later on. Against all odds. So here we go. Albert Einstein stated once that there are two ways in which we can live. We can live as if nothing is a miracle, or we can live as if everything is a miracle. And it's a positive way that he brings us to see, to really live life in a way where we realize, this is in my concept, the divinity in everything. Everything is a miracle. We look around and we see, even in obstacles, miracles coming out of the situation. We see the way that people respond to certain things. We see the way that society responds, let's say, to a major calamity, disaster. The miracles, a baby that in the midst of a tsunami survives floating on a plank of wood. To some, that's a miracle. And so we find here that many people would prefer to see life as if everything is a miracle. We will see David Hume, who is a Scottish philosopher, who once stated that miracles are transgressions of the law of nature. Attributable to the divine will or to the interference of some invisible agent. Now, David Hume, who was part of the Enlightenment era in Scotland at that time, was talking based on some of his own understanding about the natural laws that we Spiritists have another vision. We will see Aristotle disagreeing, or a statement that Aristotle rejected on his one, of course Aristotle came before, rejecting the idea that God could or would intervene in the order of the natural world in order to produce miracles. So from folk tales to different religions, we see people that have claimed to have witnessed miraculous events happening in their own life. So the question is, how do we see them? when we look at the different cultures, because regardless on how we view miracle, and some of you have responded something that I really liked and it has everything to do with our study, what we see is that throughout history there have been numerous cases of miraculous events, and the one that we always go back to and focus on the most were the miraculous events that happen in the gospel, which we will talk about a little bit here today later on. Those miracles that were performed by Jesus, the aspect of healing. People search for miraculous healings on a daily basis when they search a spiritist center or some spiritualist temple where they are searching for answers that medicine cannot provide them with, or that doctors can do anything about as far as their health is concerned. And so when we see in our history a being so pure and filled with love, divine love, impregnated with the essence of love, coming into our history, dividing our very history on the before and after his coming, and we're talking about Christ, we see that he has left a mark so profound that we believe in miracles. Because after all, he was here among us and he performed many miracles. So we will talk about this today. But as far as all of these aspects of the teachings of the gospel is concerned, before we get to it, we are going to get into the meaning of the word miracle. Etymologically, the word miracle, from mirare, to admire, means admirable, something extraordinary, surprising. It's also defined as an act of divine power contrary to the known laws of nature. This is where David Hume came in and gave his own meaning of the word miracle. And so in the thinking of the masses, the word miracle implies to something and an idea that is supernatural. No explanation. There's so much the idea that something has been attached to it, that if a miracle event can be explained, it's no longer a miracle. True or false?
True.
True. A few centuries ago, people had no concept on the idea of conception. When the two cells come together and start forming a new child. Today we know how it works. It's no longer a miraculous event. We know it's beautiful, but it's no longer something that we can explain how it happens. And a lot can be said for other things as well. So if miracle can be defined as an extraordinary event that is not explainable by natural or scientific laws, this could very well imply that God would be willing to make an exception against all the laws of nature to benefit one or a few individuals in a particular situation. And this is a comment by this gentleman who wrote, he's from California, and he wrote this article in the Spiritist magazine. And I really liked what he said, because it gets us thinking a little bit about the aspect of God's justice, infinite love and justice. Why would some benefit from the so-called miracle while others would not? Does that go in accordance with what we study as far as God's justice is concerned? And so we start thinking about this a lot more. Would God allow some to benefit and others not? And before we answer these questions, we need to probe a little bit deeper and study the aspects of what the Spiritist teachings is going to bring us today. In the very first question of the Spirit's book, what is the very first question of the Spirit's book, Elcio?
What is God?
What is God? God is a supreme intelligence, the first cause of all things. Can we understand what this means? I mean, like, we understand the words, but to have a broad understanding, visual, of what this literally means, supreme intelligence. Some of the answers in the Spirit's book will tell us that we don't have the vocabulary needed in order to understand a lot of what they're trying to tell us. We can have a concept and an idea of what they mean, but we don't know in its wholesomeness what supreme intelligence truly is. The first cause of all things. So it means that God created everything. What came before God? And that's a question I've asked my husband in the middle of the night, and he's like, don't you have any easier questions? You know? What came before God? So we don't question that. But one of the things that we can deduce from this answer, from the high order spirits, is that God is the absolute perfection. There's gotta be. If He is the first cause of all things, and we take a look around at our universe, and the harmony, the laws that govern our universe, out there and in here, the law of cause and effect, all of the divine and natural laws, we can only assume and be certain that God is absolute perfection. That nothing happens that deviates from His laws, that derogates from His divine laws. And when we start looking at something like this, we can start having a vision of Albert Einstein and seeing everything in life as a miracle. From the smallest concept of the sun shining and being nourishment to a plant that blossoms into a beautiful flower, to the simple fact that we feel the sun ray touching our skin, it can be seen as a miracle. Everything is perfection in the beautiful harmony of our universe. So, despite all of this, we can't help but understand the absolute perfection and goodness of God, the author of the divine laws. It's also said that the divine laws or the natural laws are immutable, unchangeable, like the author itself. God is the creator of the divine laws, and they govern our universe. Whether we are in a world of trials and expiations, these laws apply to our world, or if we are in a planet of regeneration or happier worlds that we've already acquired a spiritual to be in, these laws are forever, which is even more consolation in an aspect, because everything that we go through, others are going through as well. Nobody is benefited different from one another. It's the way that we live our lives. And this is another beautiful concept as well. And some people don't believe in the intelligence, or in the existence of God. And so Allan Kardec very smartly asked the question, where can we find the proof of the existence of God? Some people have a hard time understanding that there is, I'm sorry, it's kind of dark here, so I'll read from here, that there is an existence of a supreme being. And the good spirits answered, in an axiom you apply to all your sciences. And this is really great because it reminds us that Spiritism is science, philosophy, and religion. It states that there is no effect without a cause. This is the first thing they tell us. There is no effect without a cause. If you would search for the cause of whatever is not the work of human beings, then reason will answer your questions. Now, we have to be humble enough to understand the greatness before us. And a lot of people have a hard time understanding this. As far as explaining a lot of what seems to be unexplainable, there are reasons behind it. There is no effect without a cause, is the answers that the good spirits provide us. And so to believe in God, we only need to take a look at the works before us. The universe exists, so it must have a cause. And this goes back to the first question that we asked about, the creator of all things. And then they go on to tell us that to doubt God's existence would be to deny that every effect has a cause and to believe that something could have result from nothingness. When the aspect of miracle comes about, we can start understanding a little bit about this. Could a miracle have been resulted from nothingness? Could it be no explanation for the things that comes about and happens? And so if we agree with the Spiritist teachings, with the Spiritist doctrine, the classical definition of miracles makes no sense. And this is where I used to say, that Spiritism sometimes comes and takes away the aspect of how is the wonderland. Everything is explainable. We take a look at the aspect of a miracle, and if we try to find the reason behind it, we are going to find a plausible explanation if we are ready to find out what it is. In order for a miracle to happen, in the etymological meaning of the word miracle, the extraordinary, the supernatural, it would have to mean that God's perfect laws are no longer perfect because they're mutable. And we are going to find that in the Spiritist teaching, that's not something that makes sense anymore. And that also a miracle is something that is left to chance. And the Spiritist teachings will tell us that nothing is pretty much left to chance. So what about the miracles in the Gospel? Can there be explanation for all of the miracles that we find in the Gospel according to Spiritism as far as Jesus' teachings and healings are concerned? Because I like to go a little bit further. Are there miracles in some of the teachings from Christ that did not involve healing? Are there? So we will see. So they say Jesus walked on water, turned the water to wine. That's the first miracle. Yeah, but that's more profound than anybody can say. And Marcelo once told a story here about applying the gospel of Jesus into our lives and being able to turn our lives from water to wine. And we'll see that in every healing aspect, in every teachings of Jesus Christ, there is a lesson for us to apply in our daily lives. It has to do with faith. It has to do with a proactive movement from our part. And Biga talked a lot about the aspect of inner transformation, which we will find is one of the greatest aspects of miracles there exists. And we'll talk about that later on in our study today. But let's step a little bit and try to explore some of these aspects that we are saying. If we say that God must have created all of the natural laws to be perfectly in tune with our needs, does it mean that we have to know all of them in order to understand the aspect of miracles? Are we in a capable position? Are we in our spiritual maturity able to understand what all of these natural laws are and how they work?
No.
No. Who said that? Ah, good. So 200 years ago, did we know about electromagnetic waves? No. There is this guy who came about, James Maxwell, who revealed the existence of electromagnetic waves when he basically came up with a quotation and formulated that when you unify electricity with magnetism, we have electromagnetic waves. Can our world live without this concept nowadays? No. And so we see that as we progress, as we evolve, we start learning about these natural laws, about the sciences that are all around us. And we are going to see that despite the enormous advancement, scientific advancement that we have come so far, there is still a lot to learn about. Right now, they're talking about the aspect of dark matter. There is no void in the universe. Where does that say in Spiritist doctrine? Ivan, where does it say? What is in our universe that shows that there is no void of matter in the universe?
I don't know.
You do. It's the universal cosmic fluid. It's all over. So it's matter in its most primitive element. So scientists are coming to this idea that there is this thing called dark matter. And here in the Spiritist doctrine, we see how we are actually keeping up, right? That the Spiritist teaching came 157 years ago. Next year will be 157 years of the Spirit's book, 150 years of the Gospel according to Spiritism, which we'll be celebrating in the March event. So we find here that if we are humble enough, we are going to say that we don't have the capability as of yet to understand all of the natural laws. And that's why we may call certain things miracles. The divine laws being immutable, which is one of the attributes of God, our perception of the world before us, our perception of what these natural laws are, they're going to broaden as we evolve. Last week we had our opening here and David said something really extraordinary, how, the Spiritism, the science is always evolving. And there are people who will say that the Spiritist teachings is outdated. But then when we get into the books and we study the teachings on the Genesis according to Spiritism, we see that it's not, that there is so much information and material there for those who are truly searching and seeking the answers, that we are going to see that if we should just apply ourselves a little bit more, our vision will broaden. The horizons will broaden as well. So the more we learn, the more we evolve, the best we can understand and see things in a new perspective. The Medium's book will tell us that, I apologize once again, as far as miracles are concerned, Allan Kardec would say that the main objective of the studies is solely to show that as extraordinary as Spiritist phenomena, healings, manipulation of fluids, etc. may be, they do not in any way derogate from the natural laws, nor is there any miraculous, much less extraordinary or supernatural character about them. This is in the 1800s. Here's a person who comes codifying the Spiritist teaching, telling us that there is nothing extraordinary about all of this, and that the studies of such matter is only to show us that, to open our minds about all of this. And Allan Kardec was pretty amazing. So miracle has no rational explanation. When we see this, Spiritist phenomena, healings, manipulation of fluids, etc., they can be explained in the most rational manner. Reasoning faith is something that Allan Kardec brought us to understand, not to believe in something blindly, but look for the answers behind the things that we believe in. Back then, faith was something that could not be questioned in the church. Excuse me, miracles. If you question miracles in the church, they would tell you that you had no faith and you were toying with it, which was absolutely horrible. So we had to believe in things because they were there and we were told we needed to believe. Today it's a little bit different. We have the freedom to think about this and seek for the answers and search for the aspect and know why we believe in something. Why do I have faith? What gives me the certainty and clarity of mind to have faith and believe in the miracles and understand what they are? So this is what we are going to see. So there are no miracles, but rather simple effects. Every effect has a cause. Simple effects that have their reason for being included among the general laws. Now, let's say that I'm here and I drop dead. I drop dead. And let's say I was revived by divine intervention. We could say that this is a true miracle because it goes against the natural laws. If I drop dead and I am revived, it means that I went through some kind of divine intervention that allowed me to come back and scare you guys, right? But if we study a little bit more and we study about this vital principle, the vital agent, the agent that gives us vitality to the body, and I understand that perhaps I had a little bit of this fluid, this latent vitality within me, this vital fluid. Somebody who would have understood that and learned that in the chapter entitled Fluids in the Genesis According to Spiritism will say it's not a miracle. She wasn't dead, she still had vitality. If for some medical or magnetic action somebody was able to reanimate me, I didn't come back from the dead. I had some vitality left in me. Doesn't take that away the supernatural aspect of things, right? Starts making sense? So this is what we're going to see here. Spiritism is going to unveil this whole new world for us to study and seek the answers for many of the questions. Now, we are going to get in one of the teachings from Christ. One of the miracles performed that we find in the gospel, specifically the Gospel of Mark, in which he talks about the loss of blood. It's a woman who was subject to bleeding for 12 years. And a lot of you guys know about this passage. It's pretty profound. It's so profound indeed that in transpersonal psychology, it has been studied to show how we can have a proactive and active movement towards the healing of our own infirmities. But if we take a look at this and we break it down, we are going to find that a lot of the healings brought on by the Master himself had a manual, a recipe. Let me explain what he means. In studying about fluids, in studying about the quality of fluids, in studying about the powerful aspect of faith, which has been studied and confirmed in modern science, as we know, and in the way that a movement, a proactive movement from the one who's searching the healing, we are going to find that there was nothing miraculous that happened in the healing of Christ. And as a matter of fact, we are going to be called the miracle makers. We are going to be the ones to be called the miracle makers if we study about this a little bit more. As a matter of fact, Jesus said that we could do everything he did and more, giving us an idea of what awaited us in the front through our spiritual progress as a perfect being in the future, millennia from years from now. And we're closer to the beginning line, as Biga said, than to the finished one. But don't get discouraged. You know, we've already walked very, very far. Don't go back. So let's see. A woman who had been afflicted with a loss of blood for 12 years, had suffered much, had had no help from several physicians of that time, heard that Jesus was going to be coming on by. Put yourselves in that situation. Imagine, Jesus is coming. When Givaldo comes, everybody wants to go see him, right? Imagine Jesus coming. So she feels, if I could touch his garment, I knew I would be healed. She just wanted to touch his tunic. She didn't even need him to touch her. Her faith, her desire to be healed was so profound that she established a courageous, proactive movement to go to the healing source. At that time, here's Jesus walking with crowds. I mean, everybody pushing, touching, trying to see him. And at that time, she touches his tunic and she's healed of her illness automatically, instantaneously. Jesus feels it. He turns around and says that a power had gone out of him. He turns and he says, "Who touched me?" And the disciples said, "What do you mean, who touched you? There are people all around." But he said, "I feel that a power have gone out of me." And this is very significant in the Gospel according to Spiritism, the teachings. When she sees the commotion, she does even something more courageous. Because let's understand, a woman at that time was not seen as equal to men, much less a woman who was bleeding, let's say in her monthly cycles. Even worse, she touched a man who was a stranger to her. And so, understanding all of the commotion that she created, she throws herself at his feet. It's a sign of humility. And she tells him that she was the one who touched him. And he says, "My daughter, your faith has saved you. Go in peace and be healed of your illness." The passage is so beautiful. Malírio de Cerqueira Filho does a wonderful interpretation of this, but we don't need to go to his book that hasn't been translated. The Gospel according to Spiritism has many of the situations that happen here, specifically the ones. So, feeling that power had gone out of him, a power had gone out of him, what can we understand from this? We have to study about fluids. We have to study about the fluidic movement that we have. We have to understand Jesus' superiority of spirit to understand the instant healing that occurred. It expresses a fluidic movement that went from him to the infirm woman. And furthermore, both felt the action just as it had been produced. This is something else that we need to consider right here. And so the Gospel will say that it's noteworthy that the effect was not caused by the act of Jesus' will. This is even more profound. He wasn't there looking for her, willing to heal her. Christ was in constant donation mode of love and fluid and emanation and energy. The vibration that emanated from his spirit as a pure soul. We don't have that capability as of yet to be in constant loving mode, but we have the capability, the potentialities laying dormant within us to acquire that kind of stage. It says that neither magnetization nor the laying of hands had occurred. It was simply her ardent desire to be healed with his constant donation of the energy, the purifying energy. Now the question is, why is it that others weren't healed like she was? Right? Because if that's the case, then everybody would have been healed. Here's a note here that we have to seek. We may not have time to talk about this. Not all of the people in the time of Jesus were healed. And this is something that we need to ask why. Because it goes back to the law of cause and effect. And some of the things that we need to go through. Sometimes the infirmity of the physical body is not necessarily the problem. We have to heal our soul. A lot of people heal their souls as they're going through an illness, whether they become better or not. But we have to have a vision of a future life. And we have to have the rational faith to support this idea. So, it says that the radiation directed towards this woman was because in reality he was acting like a pump, an energy where he's pumping, and she was acting like a suction pump. So when her ardent desire to be healed was so profound that she was in receptive mode and he was in constant donation mode. So of course the two of them assimilated. Other people didn't have that kind of faith. So they tell us that given as a therapeutic matter, the fluid must reach the organic disorder in order to repair it. It can be directed toward the illness by the healer's will. Some people search for healers. And so the healer's will, the desire to do well, to heal the person before us, it can be attracted by the desire of the one searching for the healing. And we will learn about this in the book Missionaries of the Light, in a chapter entitled Passes. And it shows how some people are not receptive to the healing. It's as if you go in the shower to take a shower with an umbrella and a shower cap. You don't get wet. So the fluids come, but it doesn't penetrate. And this talks a lot about how we react in the passes when we are receiving the healing. Do we believe in that? We have somebody who's very close to us who's going through something that, is troubling her vision. And she says, I want to go, but what if I don't believe in it? Will I get healed? Right? So I couldn't answer her that question. Because sometimes she would be healed just to show her the ability of this other world that she doesn't know as of yet. But a lot of times, no. You won't be healed if you're not receptive to the energies there. So sometimes it's necessary for both actions, the will of the healer and the ardent desire of the person who's receiving the healing. But sometimes, including the superiority of Jesus, just his intention to do good all the time is something that would work. In this time here, he said, your faith has saved you, because she was the one who went after this healing, who so ardently believed and desired the healing. We are going to see here the aspect of faith, that we should understand that faith here is not some mystical virtue as certain people understand, but a truly attracting power. Those who do not possess it oppose the fluid current with a repelling force which paralyzes the action. And so this is something that we need to understand. As far as faith is concerned, here's another miracle that happened in the gospel according to Matthew, with the man who brought his son before Jesus, and his son was going through there was an obsession going on where the child was under the influence of spirits, and they brought it to the disciples, and the disciples couldn't help the child. So the man begged Jesus for his mercy on the son, asking him for his assistance for the insane son who was suffering what was going on. Of course, they don't talk about the obsession here, but this is how we understand it in Spiritism. So he says, I presented him to your disciples, but they could not heal him. Let's see, it's as if Jesus is right here in the middle of the room, and then Veronica comes to Jesus and says, hey, I brought it to Biga, but she couldn't help him. What gives, So he says, oh, disbelieving and perverse generation, how long will I be with you? How long must I endure you? Then the disciples came to Jesus in private after he was able to help the child. And he says, why is it that we could not expel the demon or the spirit that was obsessing the child? And he says, because your disbelief is the reason. I verily say to you, if you had faith as a mustard seed, you would say to the mountain, move from here to there, and the mountain would move. Here's a mustard seed. It's tiny. It's very tiny. But here we're talking about, if we go back here in understanding that it's a truly attracting power, we would understand why he said this here to the disciples. And here's another lesson for us. Because a lot of times we become unmotivated, discouraged in life, because we lack faith. We lack the ability to believe in ourselves. We don't believe in our capability to be good, to do good, to be able to overcome certain obstacles. And so the aspect of healing here is great, but there are always messages behind the teachings of the healings of Christ, which is important for us to consider as well. So faith means the confidence one has in accomplishing something. Do we have the faith in ourselves that we are able to accomplish anything we so desire? Do we truly believe in ourselves? Or do we allow the millennia of wrongdoings, like it was brought in the beginning of the message, to bring us down and keep us paralyzed in our progress, not believing in the wonderful things that we can actually do? And this is something very profound as well in the teachings that was brought. And it says that faith provides a kind of clarity that enables one to see in thought, envisioning it the end. Envisioning the end. We wish for a miraculous event in our lives. What is it that you wish for? Anybody there confess? So if you have the faith the size of a mustard seed, can you see it in your thought, in your mind, the thing accomplishing that you so desire? We're not talking about winning the lottery here. We're talking something more profound. Right? So it's the power of faith that receive the direct and special application in magnetic healing and magnetic action. Through faith, humans act upon the fluid, the universal agent, modifying its quality and giving it an impulse that is irresistible, so to speak. Therefore, those who combine a normally large fluidic power with an ardent faith can solely by will direct toward the good, perform the remarkable phenomena of healing and other phenomena for merely regarded as miracles, but which are nothing more than the consequences of natural laws. Allan Kardec studied the aspect of magnetism. As a matter of fact, he mentions this, the healing mediums, where there are three kinds: those who have their own magnetism, those who have a mixture of their own magnetism combined with the fluids from the good spirits, which is the one employed in the Spiritist Center. And then there are those healings that occur only by the spirits themselves in the healing process. And this is something that actually even happens sometimes when we pray, when we are sick. If we read some of the books by Andreia, we're going to find several instances where the spirits are the one applying the reparative, the renewal, the revigorating fluidic action towards the body who is ill. And so we find out here that that's why Jesus told the apostles, you know, if you did not heal, it's because you did not have the faith. To understand about fluid, this universal agent that they're talking about, the universal cosmic fluid, I encourage you guys to study the chapter on the Genesis according to Spirit, the predictions and miracles according to Spiritism about fluid, so you can better understand. It's something that should even be studied as a group, and I hope that one day it's going to be done, because there's a lot of information. But we learned here, and I'm not going to go through all of them, that the universal fluid, this agent that is involved in the aspect of healing process, is a primitive element of both the corporeal body and the perispirit. The perispirit, the fluidic body that actually allows for the reincarnation process, which are merely transformation of the universal cosmic fluid. By its very nature, the fluid condensed in the perispirit can supply aiding and reparatory elements to the body. And so when the healing occurs, they say that through this fluidic action, it happens by replacing an unhealthy molecule to a healthy one. And that's how the healing takes place. The curative power is the direct result of the purity of the injected substance. It also depends on the energy of the will, which causes a more abundant fluidic emission and gives the fluid a greater penetrating power. So when people question Jesus' ability to instantly heal her, the quality of his fluid, the purity of the injected substance is without a doubt unquestionable, the most pure source. Are we able to do some of the work? Yes. The good spirits will tell Andreia Lewis in the book Missionaries of the Light that we are able to do this. But we still lack a lot of the qualities of the good spirits, and that's why they assist us in the healing process. And this is really important for us to understand. The fluids emanate from an impure source, are like adulterated medicinal substances, and the effects of the fluidic action upon the ill are extremely varied depending on the circumstances. So there are individuals endowed with a power such that they perform instantaneous healings. Yes, there are people who have the ability to do that, and others can do it just by the act of will. We always like to use an example sometimes of a mother, you know, when a child does a boo-boo, they come, Mom, blow on it, and the mom does this, and automatically feels like it's better. It is better. There's nothing greater than a mother's love. And that moment, her instinct, her will, her desire is that the boo-boo stops hurting and the child stops hurting as well, right? So it's just a very simple idea to talk about here. When we talk about the aspect of healing, we have to learn about the superiority of Spirit of Jesus as well. Here's something beautiful that the Gospel will teach us as far as the healings of Christ is concerned. He said that we could do everything He did and more. We have in Christ, as the good spirits will tell us, the perfect standard that God has offered to humankind as a guide and model. One of the really beautiful, God bless you, aspects to learn about Jesus' healings is that He didn't do it to just bring about curiosity. He didn't do it that way. When John the Baptist went to Him, sent the disciple and asked the disciple to ask Jesus if He was the Christ, He didn't say, yep, here I am, I'm the Christ. What did He answer? He said, go tell John that the blind see, the infirm are healed, the deaf hear, and the gospel is being proclaimed to the poor. Meaning, He said, recognize me by my works. And telling us the fruit is recognized by its tree. So everything that He did, we could do, all He did and even more, gives us an idea. Huh?
A tree is recognized by the fruit.
Thank you. A tree is recognized by its fruit. What did I say? The fruit is recognized by its tree? Okay. a little bit dyslexic. So he was telling them to recognize him by his character of divine mission. And here we are studying about Spiritism, trying to learn about miracles. Spiritism also has a divine character, has a mission, which is Spiritism. It is also by the means of the good that it does that Spiritism proves its providential mission. Yes, it heals the physical bodies, but it also heals the moral infirmities. Because the moral infirmities oftentimes are the ones that provides the physical illnesses in our physical body, telling us the need to reform, to inner transform ourselves, as was so stated here before. Especially in therein lies the greatest wonders through which it affirms itself. So Spiritism comes up to us and will tell us that the most sincere believers and followers of Spiritism, as much as they were sincere believers and followers of Christ, through his example and constant mode of donation, and showing us that when he healed others, he was placing himself in service of one another, his Spiritism comes and will tell us that we will be recognized by the effort that we make in order to dominate our negative tendencies, the inner transformation. They will tell us that it's going to be a miracle to us, the teachings from this providential mission of Spiritism, when we are able to let go of the things that torment our souls, that still hinders us back in the progress, that will provide us with this unshakable faith, the kind of situation that nothing will shake us up from what we believe in. We start learning about a future life and start applying our dailiness activities, believing in that aspect, that we are the authors of our history in the future. But the other things that he taught us is that human beings share the very same essence. We actually see that we were all created by the divine being, by God. We are heirs to the universe. And so our destiny is the one day, with Spiritism, to bring into our hearts this knowledge and this understanding of pure love. He basically also brought another teaching in all of the aspect of healings and every other teachings from his gospel that had as its main objectives the aspect of loving one neighbor as oneself. And that's one of the miracles we have yet to grasp how it works. How do we make that transformation? How do we actually work on this process of loving somebody who actually hurts us? How do we work on the process of forgiveness? Forgiveness has the power of healing and also has the power of causing cancers when we don't forgive somebody, when we hold on to that negative answer. And so, to finalize, if we take a look at the word miracle in the etymological acceptation, yes, we will find that everything is a miracle. When we start living Spiritism with its providential mission, everything that we do, when it's a good thing, will provide to us a wonder, something extraordinary. We're going to say something extraordinary happened to me today. Somebody offended me at work and I didn't answer back. Whereas in 5 years ago, we would have probably punched the person. Something extraordinary happened to me today. I was attacked, but I didn't attack back. That's extraordinary. It's a miracle in itself. And it's a beautiful thing. In God's goodness, we are going to see miracles. In His kindness, in new opportunities of reincarnation. That's a miracle for us to work and everything else. And to finalize, I really like this. It was by a gentleman called Hugh Elliott. He said, miracles, you do not have to look for them. They are there 24/7, beaming like radio waves all around you. Put up the antenna, turn up the volume, snap, crackle. This just in, every person you talk to is a change to change the world. Every one of us are miracle makers. And this is basically the aspect of seeing Spiritists' true devotional mission as allowing us to perfect ourselves, to better ourselves, to become somebody who can actually change the world, to see in each other miracle makers, which truly is what we are. So this is our study today. I don't know if you want to open up for questions.